Today I want to talk about the topic of mentorship, specifically in a subcultural context. There are a couple of different things that got me started thinking on this, but the first one was this girl that I follow on Instagram. She is a self-described elder goth who a lot of times shares little tidbits of what it was like to be growing up goth in the 90s. And the other day she said something about how when you were first learning, a lot of times you'd have a goth parent who would help you get introduced into the scene. They would show you how to style an outfit, how to do your makeup, they would teach you certain bands and everything. They would probably teach you how to the proper etiquette for going to the club or how to dance and all of that. And I just thought that was really great. That sounded really, really special. And it got me thinking about the value of a mentorship like that. And in a sense, that is kind of an oral tradition, imparting valuable information and context from one person to another trusted person. It's not something you could just buy a book on, and especially back then you couldn't really just Google it. So there's something so special about that, so valuable about that. And like oral traditions throughout history, it's perhaps something that's on a downswing or in danger of being lost. Another thing that got me thinking about this topic is I was doing a music challenge on Instagram, and one of the prompts was, today's song is a song that somebody showed you. And I was like every song? How is that even a question? And I just thought about how important my musical journey was, and my development was, how important other people were to that development. I mean, most of my favorite artists were shown to me by somebody else. That's vital. That's vital. It wasn't just about putting on a random playlist on Spotify and finding stuff. It was about networking and partnership and, I don't know, excitedly sharing things with each other, and also being receptive to what your friends are trying to show you. So I was lucky enough to have what I would now call a metal mentor. And it was one of my friends from high school. I'll say his name because he's probably never going to watch this because he disappeared. His name was David. And his influence on my life is monumental the more and more I look back and think about it. So when I came into metal, I came in with what I would call a balance sheet. Snapshot in time. So I was buying compilation CDs that labels were putting out featuring songs from the bands that were on the label right now, with new releases right now. And that's the only context I had. But then when I met David and started hanging out with him, he gave me history. He gave me context. I came in with a song from Death's Sounds of Perseverance. And then David burned me copies of Scream Bloody Gore and Leprosy and Human and Spiritual Healing. So yeah, he would burn me CDs. He would tell me things. He would tell me context, give me history, give me names, names of the people, names of the bands, names of the labels. He was helping me understand this broader context in which all the metal world is intertwined. I don't know, just the fact that he could help me look backwards to the 90s and the 80s really, really helped me gain perspective. He's the one that showed me Acid Bath, who is my favorite band ever to this day. He would give me recommendations. He would burn me CDs. He would sometimes hand me a CD and be like, listen, I don't know if you're going to like this or whatever, but, we'll see. And I'd be like, I bet I will. And, I would try my best to like everything he gave me. I didn't like Acid Bath at first. I probably told you this, but I didn't like Acid Bath at first. It took me a couple tries. But yeah, he would challenge me. He wouldn't just try to cater to me. He would try to expand my taste. And he wanted to know stuff from me too. Like, he didn't know that much about black metal, so he would always ask me for recommendations, although I kind of liked weird black metal at the time. Now, David had a mentor of his own. I bought compilation CDs and like read metal magazines and stuff. But David was raised on metal because his uncle was in the metal scene in the 90s, in the death metal scene. So his uncle basically raised him on metal. So he got that context from an elder metalhead. Let's never say that again. So he got that like historical context. He got like that mature influence in his life and passed that on to me, and I'm forever grateful. And David was also a musician. He was a drummer, and I think that also makes a difference. So I was hanging out with like him and his friends and just like watching them jam, hearing them talk, hearing the language. They would talk about the things that stand out to them when they listen to certain bands, and it kind of helped me get a greater understanding of the genre from a musician's standpoint. He just helped me understand everything. And it wasn't like he sat down with me and taught me, but it was just like being around him over time. Like, this stuff just comes out. It was very natural. It never even felt like a mentorship. It felt more collaborative, but I gained a lot more from it than he did. I'm very fortunate. The more I look back, metalheads were few and far between, especially, you know, the certain type of breed, the certain breed of metalhead that I would have been looking for. So it was probably destiny. I had to adjust my light because the sun's going down. It's getting kind of bad. Well, we're gonna keep going anyway. You know, some of the trendier metal that I came upon at that time, the metal of the day, it came and went, but David really helped me like lay these foundations of what I needed to know and what would always last and what would still continue to influence bands all the way to this day. I mean, it's just the standard stuff that I needed to know, and a lot of people don't ever get that. And the context, having someone who can give you context is so invaluable. I mean, he was mostly death metal, a little bit of grind. I guess that was pretty much it. It's death and grind. A little bit of, he liked doom too. But, you know, he showed me old school death metal. Now old school death metal is probably my most listened to genre at the moment. I mean, he made me me. And I never went to a concert with him, but I heard, you know, he'd been to some before. And so I got to hear about it, and I probably learned a little bit of concert culture from him too. So earlier I gave that example of like, I came in with a track from The Sounds of Perseverance, and then David showed me the earlier Death albums. And like, sure, you can Google the list of Death albums, but to have someone look you in the eye and put that CD in your hand and say, you need to listen to this, there's just something so different about it. For them to say, you know, this track is my favorite and this is why, or this album means so much to me and this is why. I guess it just makes that learning experience so much more palpable. And just to have a partner in it, you know? And I feel for like a kid today who hears a death song on Spotify and just like Googles them and like sees the lists, sees the names, sees the history, but you don't see the people that they connected with. You know, you don't see like the feelings that people had from listening to these albums. You don't see that. You just see words and lists. Editing Katie here with another thought regarding getting this context. Okay, so I have a friend who was kind of new to black metal and forging her own path, you know, venturing through on herself and like Spotify or whatever people do these days. And she messaged me one day like, I wonder I wonder if these bands really do worship Satan. And it just like, and that was a perfect example of just not having that context, and seeing how, lost people are without it. And I don't know, that's why like conversation and collaboration can be so vital in an understanding. Okay, so as a side note, going back to goth, I did not have a goth mentor. I did not know any goths. I just wandered around on Vampire Freaks and bought a gothic beauty magazine. I knew what I saw in Hot Topic, very little of which was actually goth. However, they did carry Project Records compilation DVDs. But long story short, I had no mentor in goth. I had no goth parents, if you will. And because of that, I'm not, I've had plenty of time. But I still think that because of that, I didn't have proper context. And that's why, like, my goth-iness is kind of spotty or whatever. I think I would still be primarily a metalhead, though. That's where my heart truly lies. So let's continue talking about mentorship. Mentorship, especially in those like coming of age years, it not only gives you info, but it gives you context, camaraderie, and community. It gives you a wider understanding. It gives you like relevance. It gives you connectedness. Sorry, I don't know why I keep saying death. Like that's the most basic example I could give. But you're not just like, okay, so there's this band called Death that's big. No, instead, when you like have friends in it, you learn more about like how Death was formed, why they were formed, who they influenced, what the best album is, who influenced them. You learn to hear the influences. You learn the names of the people that played in Death, and what other bands those people played in, etc. And I know you can Google all of that, but there's something for me personally when it's like coming in conversation, I just retain it so much more. And of course now we have the wonderful book Choosing Death, where you can learn all of this. Having a mentor, and I'm just using the metal subculture as an example, but it helps you learn the language, learn the verbiage, like learn how to speak it. You can be Googling Death all day, but when you're like out at a concert or whatever, or making a metal friend, you won't necessarily know how to speak about it. There's a culture to it. So, having a mentor helps you learn how to have those conversations. It also helps you learn how to listen. How do you listen? What do you listen for? We would like lay on the floor and just like play music and just listen to it. Do kids do that now? I don't know. The internet can still be helpful, especially for getting a consensus, like getting a broader idea. Reading reviews, seeing discussions, seeing how people are taking a certain album or what have you. Context. This is part of what I'm talking about with context. And seeing the discussion or having discussion gives you that context. And this is what I'm talking about. Like when I'm at a concert, this is an example. So I was at a concert and I was at a merch table, and in between bands, Celtic Frost just came on over the speakers, and it was from the Monotheist album. And I was like telling the merch guy, I was like, I know everyone hated this album, but I loved it. And I could say that because I was involved in the community when the album came out and knew that people were complaining about it. I don't know, so that's what I mean by like context and like relevance. So with mentorship, you not only get the what, but you get more of the how and the why. And having that community aspect teaches you how to go out into the world and behave as a metalhead. This sounds really stupid. But yeah, I mean, this in the same way that goth parents would teach their baby bats how to go to take them to the club for the first time and just show them how it's done. Okay, I think I've rambled on enough about the awesomeness of mentorships. So let's come to the present day, where I have been asking myself, is mentorship as common as it once was? Editing Katie here again. Going off of, is mentorship as common as it once was? Something that my Generation Z friends have pointed out to me is they feel like there is a decline in subcultures, and that could be because people aren't mentoring each other. People are sort of blazing their own path, which isn't necessarily bad, but in that you don't have that community and you don't have that oral tradition that's passing along these subcultural guidelines. So as a result, you may not have that many Zoomers in your vicinity that are involved in a subculture, because there's not that it's not regimented anymore, because everyone's just online doing their own thing. I'm old now, but I'm still wondering, has mentorship decreased? Has the desire for it decreased? With the onset of the internet, I feel like a lot of people think they don't need it. They don't need mentorship. There is a lot more independent learning, which is really cool, but I feel like it's missing that element of human interaction, which is so beneficial. I had to freaking change my lights again. Sorry, this is so tacky. But I see people expose themselves to a subculture online in that balance sheet kind of way, seem to think they've already arrived, consider themselves assimilated, already affiliated, go ahead and slap that label on themselves, even without having any sort of journey or learning period under their belt. And I don't mean to gatekeep or anything like that. I'm just trying to explore, like, involving yourself into a subculture could be a really enriching experience and not just like an identifying experience, you know? And I can't help but thinking about Spotify and streaming. Musically, Spotify just throws stuff at you with no context. They don't say, no, this is a very important band. This is a very important band that you need to know about, so I want you to listen very carefully, okay? And remember that the year was 1987. Right, so okay, with Spotify listing, exploratory listing is great. So if you're exploring via Spotify, you get exposure, but you get no context. And to go back to goth, so goth YouTubers and goth Instagrammers are easily stumbled upon, seemingly giving you a clear understanding of what they and goth are all about. But that alone is nowhere near the full story. Okay, and it's hard to like put this into words, all right? But like, here's another example. My husband is an ultra runner, and if you wanted to get into that, you could easily just look up and see what gear he's wearing, where he runs, and for how long, and just do that. Just do that. Are you an ultra runner then? I don't know, because if you just did that, you don't know the why. You don't know the underneath. You don't know the foundation. I think what I'm saying is missing, particularly when you don't have a mentor, is you're missing an initiation. I love this subject of initiation because we are in a culture that doesn't really have initiations or rites of passage. So I think that's why I have really valued having a mentor, because they initiate you. There's only so much you can learn from this like one-way mirror that is the internet. Collaboration and customization come from that two-way mirror that is a mentorship. And mentorship involves actually living the life too. It involves lifestyle. Like, going back to the topic of the internet, a lot of people like learn what they know just from looking at the pictures on Instagram. And a lot of people like learn this stuff on the internet so that they can portray themselves in that way only on the internet. And there's not that component of living the actual life a lot of times. I mean, I guess it's like a lot of subculture involvement nowadays is based on appearance and aesthetic. So, you know, if that's the case, then context doesn't matter. Listening styles, history, conversation, all that doesn't matter. It wouldn't even be relevant, because what was once a lifestyle is now, via the internet, turning into more of like a costume, an appearance, an impression, or a label, a classification, a balance sheet, a snapshot without the context. And I'm not saying you have to have a mentor, because you don't. You'll be just fine. My husband actually didn't have a mentor when he got into ultra running. He just kind of had to forge his own path. Oh my God, this is long. I'm sorry. All right, so if mentorship is in fact decreasing, is it because people are too proud to ask questions? Have people lost sight of the value that comes from real one-on-one learning? And is this because they can just Google everything? You know, lately the benefits of many types of mentors have been kind of highlighted in my eyes, and I've been seeing how I could do well to have various kinds of mentors, like a personal trainer or a spiritual teacher, which I think I am going to get a spiritual teacher one day. But yeah, many like communities and subcultures are so rich in opportunities for mentorship and rich for like real human knowledge that you can't just hashtag. And it doesn't have to be this like official thing. It could just simply be like finding friends who are into whatever you're into, or just like involving yourself in that community somehow. Going back to that goth example, I just think about like having a mentor sit with you and like help you put on your outfit and like help show you how to do makeup and everything, and collaborating with you is just so much cooler than like you looking at the goth hashtag on Instagram and trying to recreate whatever they've got going on. And I don't think I've ever been a mentor really in any capacity. I don't know. But it's hard because like sometimes I do want to offer advice or opinions, but I also want to be respectful of like everybody's journey. And there's really no point if that person doesn't want to receive that information. I'm not going to force anything. Some of the tarot cards I've been pulling lately have been basically saying like, don't underestimate the value and the skills of the people around you. Don't underestimate the talents of the people around you. That you need like teamwork and collaboration sometimes to get where you want to be. It makes me think of this whole concept, this whole mentorship thing. And again, I'm not trying to be a gatekeeper. I'm not saying like someone must hold your hands to take you across the threshold to where you can say, I am now a metalhead, or I'm now a goth, or whatever else. But I'm just saying like, I'm so grateful that that was part of my experience and like my initiation. And I don't want anybody to think that they don't need that. I mean, maybe you don't, but I want you to know that it's very special if you do meet someone who loves what you love. And it should never be a contest of like anyone's trying to prove themselves or anything. It should be just like, look at this, listen to this is so great. It should be celebration. It shouldn't be like education. That was pretty good. Nothing can replace the oral tradition. And if you have a chance to receive mentorship via that oral tradition, if you will, it's a very special thing.